Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to 40 Years and 40 Beers. Joining us this week is Southwest Philly's finest, Leah Savoli. Leah has many credits in the acting world and has a lot of production credits to her name. To name a few, we have Deadwood, Robot Chicken, Delco The Movie, My Name is Earl, as well as Girl Lost, which was made in 2018. And from what I understand, spent a few weeks on the Amazon Prime #1, right? Is that correct?
Absolutely. Amazon Prime #1. I think Tubi #1. That's Robin Bain's film. Robin's the director, the writer, just the mastermind. She's amazing out in Los Angeles. It hit #1 on quite a few platforms. And that was an indie film success, which started as a crowdfunding campaign back in, I want to say 2014, maybe, right around there, maybe 2014, 15, somewhere around there. I think we shot it in 2015, 16. These things take time, but I've never heard anybody introduce me as Southwest Philly's finest. Now, it's funny because here I am, producer of Delco The Movie, living in Delco with Delco all over. Delco, do not disown me. What you heard is true. I actually am from Southwest Philly, but and proud of that. I say I'm from Philly. My younger brothers and sisters, they would definitely claim Delco because my parents moved us out here. I'm dating myself, but in the mid 80s. And so I went to middle school onward in Delaware County, North Lee, Sun Valley, and then went to Rosemont and Westchester and all that. So I claim both. It depends who I'm talking to. I claim Philly, but I claim Delco as well. So it was really funny to hear you introduce me as. Did you hear that, Southwest Philly? I'm coming for you.
Good, I'm glad. Well, we found out in our pre-interview, that we actually have some small world connections. World
connections. My brother, my aunt, my cousin, my uncle.
It's amazing. It's such a small world, the Delco Southwest Philadelphia connection. It's amazing how often it crosses over.
Well, so funny story. Earlier today, I was out at one of my appointments and I was chatting with the gal there, and she asked me what's it like to be back, be back here a little bit. And I said, what's funny is I've been running into people who are like, oh, well, that was what it was, is I know her dad. I was like, yeah, I know your dad. She's like, how do you know my dad? I'm like, because your dad knows my dad. And she's like, how did you find this out? And I was like, well, actually, we shot a piece of Delco the Movie at the Delco Shack in Springfield. And the owner of that, Joe Vacone, this was his daughter. And when I went there that day for the shoot, he was like, is your dad Tony or is that your brother? And I was like, that's my dad. Well, it's my dad and my brother. Like, I don't know, which one are you talking about, Anyway, long story short, I was telling her that that's been happening to me. Anywhere I go these days, somebody's like, I know your brother, I know your sister, I know your dad. My dad seems to be the most popular. I had no idea my dad had such a fan club here in Delaware County. But living so long in LA, I never got that. Like, nobody knew my family, like it was like, oh, I know you, or I know somebody that knows you. And so it's been a really interesting, like, adjustment, but like really neat at the same time. And then here you are, in our pre-interview, tell me that, half of, my whole dad's side of the family.
School with your brother.
Yeah. Both of you went to eighth, was it 8th grade, I think?
8th grade it was.
8th grade with my brother Eric. So yeah, I was always jealous that I didn't get to go to 8th grade at Our Lady of Loretto like you guys did. That's funny, right? Because I was convinced that I was probably going to be the May Queen. And I felt like that, that got taken away from me by...
Yeah. That whole Catholic school.
To public school and just went to CCD, and I didn't get to be the May Queen.
You know what? I think things worked out for you, though. I think everything ended up working out well. So where'd you go to high school?
Sun Valley.
Went to Sun Valley. So
yeah, I went to Sun Valley.
Is that when the acting bug hit you? Were you always interested in acting from a young age? Did you take any classes? Were you just in maybe local theater?
So yes and no. So I always had a flair for the dramatic. My mother will tell you that, I was just always a very emotional kind of child. And when I was younger, I did a lot of dance classes, tap and ballet and jazz. Like I don't want to say most kids, but I feel like a lot of kids, you kind of experiment with what you want to do. So I took a lot of dance classes. I took gymnastics classes. I took modeling classes. Bless you. Who knew? That's a thing. You can actually take modeling classes. Mainline models, they're still out there in existence today. I discovered. I was like, oh my God, I went to your school like 30 or 40 years ago. So that was another one of those fun small world moments. Like, yes, you're the same lady. So never really took any acting classes, but started to do, I would say, in middle school. In middle school, I started to do like school plays, and in middle school and high school. Never anything major. Didn't really pursue it out of that. I was going to school to be a teacher, psychiatrist, or elementary education. So I did a double major in psychology and elementary education. I always kind of thought I would work with maybe teenagers, runaways, troubled youth. That's just kind of always what called to me in pregnancy and things of that sort. So that was like kind of the path I was on. Long story short, dropped out of grad school, ended up on tour with a bunch of rock bands, and the sensible thing to do at that point was to move to Hollywood. And that was kind of when once I was there and I'd been out in LA for a couple of years, it kind of hit me like, why are you all the way out here away from your family if you're not going to like really go for it and pursue to a dream that you can't pursue anywhere else. And I had been working a lot in rock and roll. I had gone on tour with a bunch of bands, the summer before, and ended up booking bands and promoting at local nightclubs. And that was kind of, how I got my feet wet in Hollywood, so to speak. Some of the rock and rollers that were already out there, kind of took me under their wings and got me that kind of solid grounding where I felt like I had found my tribe. I had found my people, out there, but I still didn't really know what I was doing necessarily. I didn't have a plan. And a guy who's now a really good friend of mine handed me a business card from this school called Van Mar Academy of Television and Motion Picture Acting. Ivan Markota, rest in peace, from New York. A big Catholic guy from New York. He wore gold crosses, gold chains. You guys would have loved him. He handed out little notes and little newspaper clippings as you walked into his classroom. He yelled at you about your teeth or if you weren't dressed the right way. He was great. He would have totally fit in Southwest Philly. And that's kind of then when I started to actually take it seriously and started taking classes and starting to find out okay, what is this all about? What is background work? What is extra work? How do you do this? How do you make money at this? What are the steps? What are the steps to get into the union? And how does someone like me who doesn't know anybody out there and just here like everybody else trying to, get to that next rung on the ladder or that next credit, really, right? You hear even to this day, the biggest of celebrities out there basically say, after each job, they're looking for their next job. That's just kind of how that industry goes. It's very different than what I was pursuing, so quite the just kind of throw caution to the wind, and there's no real rhyme or reason necessarily.
So you get out to LA, and let's be honest. I mean, you have one of those resumes where people go, wait, you were in Deadwood, you were in Robot Chicken, then Delco the Movie. Do you secretly just like surprising people, with some of your film credits?
I think every so often lightning strikes.
Yeah. Okay.
Every so often lightning strikes, and I have had some of these just really jaw-dropping career moments, and I've had the opportunity to work with some absolutely amazing people. And then there's all the in-between, right? Then there's all the in-between. I might have booked a commercial or two, to help keep the bills paid, let's be honest, but every so often then there's lightning hits and something that I can really get behind and really be proud of, with Delco the Movie. It's funny that, you're comparing or stating, Deadwood and Robot Chicken in the same sentence with Delco the Movie, but let's be real, Delco the Movie, lightning has struck here.
I agree.
And people are super excited for it, and, Chris and I have known each other for about 13 years. And, he asked me a couple years ago to get on board with this and, help him with the initial stages of the crowdfunding is where I first came on to board. But, it's a long life, right? And it can be a long journey, and it's kind of like a game of attrition, a lot of people say in the entertainment industry, right? And the more you've been around and the more you've proven yourself, the more you've done, the more people rely on you. And my first experience, Deadwood was, I started off as non-union background on that, and
so you weren't SAG. You weren't SAG.
No, not at first. When Deadwood first came out, I was non-union still. I'd only been in LA for about 3 years, maybe at the time, and it was kind of at that crux what we were just talking about, where I realized I wanted to focus on the acting. I was in the classes. I was in Ivan's class. I'd probably been going to Van Mar Academy for about a year at that point and was working part-time at a gym, front desk girl, like 6 a.m. front desk girl. And friends of mine had explained to me how to get signed up to do background work in Los Angeles. It's a company called, oh my gosh, am I blanking? Central Casting. They're worldwide famous. There's an office in New York. There's an office in LA. They've been around for, 30 years, maybe longer. And you sign up with them and you put your, back then they took a little snapshot of you. You had to go in person. Now, of course, things are digital, but they take a little snapshot of you and you could call this hotline. You could call this hotline every day, every night, every day to find out what they were looking for the very next day or the days coming up. So you had to have a very flexible schedule. It was very hard to have any kind of other job if you wanted to pursue this kind of work. Some people got what was called a calling service where you could pay, I don't know, I think it was like $56 a month and somebody else would sit on that hotline for you and call for you every day. I never ended up doing that. And Deadwood was probably one of the reasons why, because once I got on Deadwood, I was pretty much full time on Deadwood for all 3 seasons of its existence. But it was still that uncertainty of did they need you or did they not? So I remember hearing about Deadwood on that hotline. And the breakdown said something that, they were looking for brunettes, all natural, no plastic surgery, no boob jobs, nothing of the sort. They were looking for curvier, white, brunette ladies in their 20s and 30s. And I was like, oh my God, that's me. I was like, wow.
I'll be there tomorrow.
Right?
Because you were at the Gem, right? You were at the Gem Saloon.
I was one of the Gem girls in the Gem Saloon. Al Swearingen was my boss, and Dan Doherty was kind of the character that I most interacted with. Earl W. Brown is still a good friend to this day. Just gave me some advice on this new health kick I'm trying. And I got to work with Earl Brown every day, Ian Swearingen, Jerry Jewell became a very good friend during the time. I got to work every day pretty much with Earl Brown, who plays Dan Doherty, and Ian McShane. Jerry Jewell became a very good friend of mine. Paula Malcolmson, who played Trixie, was like just mentored all of us. Like they all
She was
did.
Incredible.
Every single person. And David Milch, I can't say enough good things about David Milch. Tim Olyphant, Greg Feinberg, Alan Smith, like just the directors, the producers. And you're probably wondering, like, but you were a non-union background. How do you know all these people? How did you become friends? It was unlike anything. They were all so wonderful to work with. So started off, as non-union background in the Gem Saloon and quickly learned that the more you were available and the more you said yes, you were going to be the go-to, right? So let's say, I don't know, let's say they have 40 potential Gem girls on their list, and I managed to be one of those top 5. And, they would go down the list, and if you weren't available, they're going to go towards somebody else. So I quickly learned, like, I gave up pretty much my part-time job, stopped working so that I could say yes. And David Milch, he's such an incredible human being and really got to know and took care of everyone on the set, all the way down to background, to the point of there was about a dozen of us who we were on a scholarship and he was paying for classes for us on the off season. So it was pretty much like an unwritten contract that during the season, you were available to be in the Gem Saloon or wherever you were. In my case, it was the Gem Saloon. But if you're a fan of that show, you know that you saw the same people. You saw the same miners. You saw the same shoe shiner. You saw the same bartender. They were all extras. And then every once in a while, one of us got to speak and it was all like, oh my God, Susie got to speak today.
I'm talking tomorrow.
Exactly. Well, a lot of times you didn't even get a heads up. You didn't even know that it was happening tomorrow. Sometimes it happened like right then and there. And that was, again, the magic of David Milch. But there was a dozen or so of us that, and during the off season, he had us on a scholarship and was paying for they were acting classes, but they were more than just acting classes. They were really like how to be a good human and let go of your ego and work in a symbiotic relationship. Like they were very, very interesting classes that we were taking. It was really like kind of learning just how to relate to people. And I think part of that was he had been in this business for so long. He had already done NYPD Blue and what's the other one? Hill Street Blues, NYPD, Hill Street Blues. And I think he knew the importance of having a set where you could trust everyone, that everyone was an adult, that everyone was responsible, that everyone was going to be a mature adult, and that there wasn't going to be drama on set, because that can kill a production.
Yeah.
And it was an amazing time. So by season 3, I ended up getting my SAG card, but not on Deadwood, on Robot Chicken at the exact same time that I was working on Deadwood. So it was a super interesting time, super interesting day. Both shows called me on the same day to work at the same time. And I had to explain to Deadwood that I had just booked this incredible voiceover job on a cartoon that was a union cartoon and was going to give me my SAG card into the union. It's called a Taft-Hartley. If you speak on a union show before your union. And both productions worked it out with me. Robot Chicken let me come in an hour earlier than they had planned, because in the voiceover world, you don't really start too early.
Yeah.
And Deadwood was just like, get here as soon as you can, get to set as soon as you can. They happened to be shooting a scene that day that I needed to be in, because it was a matching scene that they had already shot, and my character was established like in that scene, even though I was still background player at that point. And, and it came to be that David ended up writing some lines for me that I got to speak in season 3. Got to have a moment.
Did you get to say the most used line in Deadwood history?
I did not.
The most used word.
I did not, but it wouldn't have made sense for one of us Gem girls to just burst out and call somebody a cocksucker. It just wouldn't, it just...
It's amazing how the writers, I'm like, they slip it in there 7-8 times, and it's not for show. It's used perfectly.
Yeah.
And that was one of the biggest, compliments about the show was the writing, and just how absolutely incredible that, David and the writers even made, the word cocksucker sound like poetry, right? Like depending on who was saying it and in what manner they were saying it. But I learned so much on that show. Here's a for instance. There was season 2. I think it was episode 2, maybe. Al has hemorrhoids and he's stuck up in the office, and the doc is trying to fix him. And so me and the other Gem whores are hanging out on the balcony. Everybody's worried about Al. During rehearsal, David Milch comes over and he goes, "What's your name?" to me. And I say, "Well, sir, you haven't given me a name," is what I kind of like start to say. And he starts to walk away. And I said, "But in my head, my name is Tess, and I'm from Montana," and blah, 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 blah. And I just spit it out like a whole thing. And he turns around and he goes, "Exactly. So Tess, you're going to say, Dan, you're going to say, da, da, and Tess, you're going to say yes, da, 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 da." And he walks away. Now, I'm non-union. This would be a Taft-Hartley. This would be paperwork. This would be a whole to-do. But this is the kind of stuff that David loved to do. Well, he walks away. His first AD walks over to me and she goes, "You're not going to say anything. When he talks to you, you're just going to nod your head." And I'm like, but, so they're reeling him in, right? Like they got to reel him in. They can't let David just do everything he wants all day long. There is a budget to follow. So, but I remember my little sister, after she saw that episode, and she maybe is like 19, 20 years old at the time. I remember talking to her on the phone and she was like, "Hey, I watched Deadwood this week." She goes, "That was really weird." I said, "What?" She goes, "Why didn't you say anything when that guy was talking to you?"
That's funny. I'm going to have to go rewatch that episode.
But yeah, it was a master class in just being a part of a television family. It was a master class in acting. It was a master class in, like I said, just how to be a good human.
How to behave in the industry, yeah.
Yeah. And an example, I think, of like how generous people could be and how people can have your back and how every job is a referral for the next job, right? You never know who you're going to be working with and what position they're going to be in next and how one another may end up helping each other somewhere along the line, of your career path.
Yeah.
Now, and you know what? I mean, you were with some pretty heavy hitters on that show. Let's be honest. I mean, Timothy Olyphant, right? I believe I'm pronouncing his last name correctly.
Yeah.
Ian McShane. Like you said, it sounds like it was an extremely welcoming set.
It was. It really was. I mean, Timothy Olyphant ended up that gym that I told you I worked at part-time. He was a member there and we didn't know each other at first. But then after a while, I was like, I got to tell him, that I'm on the show. And so I remember, by season 3, when I was given a speaking role, he comes into the gym the next morning and he's like, hey, me and my wife, we watched the show last night, and I was like, that's my friend that works at the gym. She's the front desk girl. And I was like, oh my God, Timothy Olyphant's at home telling his wife, like, oh, there's the front desk girl.
My friend, yeah. That's awesome.
Meanwhile, he's getting, multiple K per episode, which he deserves. $100
a day, sometimes not even. Back then, oh my gosh, when I was non-union, I was thinking about this earlier because I knew you guys were going to want to talk about this. Non-union background work, it was about $64 for 8-hour shift. That's how much I was making a day.
Wow. But at the end of the day, it's just like anything, right? Yeah, it opened other doors. Correct.
Mm-hmm.
There's probably how many young aspiring actors, actresses give up after 4 or 5 times in that situation, and it's the 2 or 3 who just said, you know what, I want to go one more time. I want to go one more time. That ended up succeeding, right? And that's what pretty much happened. It sounds like.
Yep, absolutely. And it's funny. Bonnie Gillespie, she has a bunch of stuff out there. BonnieGillespie.com. She wrote a book called Self-Management for Actors, and she wrote a column. And one of her columns that she wrote was called One More Time. And it was inspired by a conversation that her and I had where I was like, it was one of those moments where I was like, I don't know how many more times. And she was like, one more time.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
And then one more time.
If you can keep doing one more time. Yeah.
Yeah. Give it one more try. Give it one more try. Yep. Until you hit the point where you're like, I got no more tries left in me, right? Maybe if it's not fulfilling you anymore, if the thrill of it is gone, and you go through ups and downs, right? Like I have now been in SAG, the Screen Actors Guild, since 2005, 20 years. This is my 20th year in the Screen Actors Guild, and I remember a day where I thought that was going to be impossible. Like I had no idea how I was going to get into SAG. I was doing background work all the time and I wasn't getting my I never once got a SAG voucher. The standard way to get into SAG was 3 SAG vouchers. You'd do background work and hopefully somebody didn't show up and you got the leftover SAG voucher, or you knew somebody who knew somebody, or you did something on set that day that they got the SAG voucher. Never happened to me in like 3 or 4 years of working, and then Robot Chicken came along. And that was, the Taft-Hartley is kind of like the Willy Wonka golden ticket. It gets you to the front of the line. So you don't need the 3 vouchers. You just get to skip to the front of the line. And that's what ended up happening to me. And I just remember like thinking like, oh my God, this is impossible. I'm always going to be making $64 a day. There was one day on the set of Deadwood. It's an episode where Dan Doherty kicks the crap out of the other guy and then there's the antlers and all that. So I am in that scene. And I'm the only Gem gal. We'll use the word gal since this is a podcast, but technically we were the Gem whores in the saloon. And so I'm the only gal in this scene all day. And so much so that like the hair and makeup for like the lead actors is the one that's handling me because my face is right there. And he kind of hits me with a towel and tells me to go running off before the big fight happens. And I think we were on set for like 16 or 17 hours that day. All the other background are like sleeping in the corners. They're like sleeping on the floor, sleeping in the corners and whatnot. And I'm working in every shot because that's where I was when it started. So they got to keep me there. And every time he's doing this fight, I got to be in that chair and I got to get up and right? All the continuity has to happen. I have to be a part of it. And I remember hearing this rumor about golden hour, which apparently meant if we cross a 15-hour workday, you start to get your hourly rate, your daily rate per hour. And I was like, wow, okay. 17 hours in, we clock out. And I say to the PA as I'm logging out, like, hey, so I heard about this like golden time thing. And he's like, sweetie, that's just for union. And I said, 17 what?
Hours?
And I said, wait, so like that union guy that's been napping over there in the corner for 5 hours now,
he's getting it, yeah.
But I wasn't. I remember I called my mom on the drive home. It was out in Santa Clarita, so it was a good like 45-minute drive back to LA every day. Out on Melody Ranch is where we shot it. It was amazing being out there. And I remember called my mom crying like, I worked my butt off today. I was in every scene, and people that slept in the corner are making like 5 times what my maybe $100 paycheck was going to end up being because I was non-union. So yeah, I've paid my dues.
Yeah,
I agree. So I want to ask, I do want to ask one more question about Deadwood before we move on to other parts of your career. So Deadwood's a very iconic show, right? If you could take a few minutes to tell us if you had to tell one story that would entertain at a dinner party about Deadwood, what would it be?
One story that would entertain at a dinner party. Here's a fun story. Lunch breaks. Sometimes I got to be a stand-in. Season 3, because I was now union. So I also ended up being used as a stand-in. And so if you don't know what a stand-in is, it's usually somebody who sort of looks like the actor, at least the same like kind of height, weight, and complexion, so that the lighting department can get the lights and the cameras, everything ready while the actor is in their dressing room doing, final hair and makeup, so that they don't have to be standing there sweating while, somebody that sort of looks like them can do that job.
And you do the scene, basically, right? Like you walk through the scene.
Sometimes you can. Yes. Yeah, you're at least going to walk through it. You're at least going to walk through it so that you can then tell the actor that's coming in to do it for real, you're going to say this, then walk over to here, then you're going to stop here, then, he's going to throw you that hat. So make sure you're you're going to help them with the positioning of how the whole thing is going to break down. But you're also there for the lighting purposes and all of that. So you're typically should look somewhat like the person. Well, season 3, HBO was coming in. They were bringing a B camera crew. So A camera is the regular Deadwood crew who's working every day. And they're shooting. And we're probably behind schedule because we were almost always behind schedule. So they're shooting the episodes. Well, HBO wants to come in and shoot a trailer for the season 3 premiere, which is like next week or something. So they end up booking me as a stand-in on the B unit, which was really just the people from HBO, not people that I necessarily knew. They weren't people that I had worked with. Like they were HBO's people that came in, not Deadwood's people, if that makes sense. So there was like a camera guy from HBO and their people just so that they could call in, they'd call Trixie over to do this one scene and then she was done, right? And then call Al in because they're putting the trailer together for the season premiere. Well, I am the stand-in. I am the only stand-in. So I am the stand-in for every single one of the actors that day on the HBO promo. The HBO guys were laughing because, then I'd come out with like a beard and a hat and they'd be like, oh my God. They're like, who are you going to be next? Yeah. And I'm like, I don't know. Like, that's just
wait
what
5
they told
minutes.
me. It was so much fun. I got to be Calamity Jane. Awesome. I got to, hold the bottle, pretend to drink. I got to be Trixie, hold a cigarette, pretend I'm doing this. I got to be Al. I got to be Doc Cochran. I got to be every single actor that they needed to do the stand-in for. And it was hilarious.
That's crazy. What was the last day like? What was the very last day like?
The last day, we had no idea. So it was season 3. And like you said, a lot of big stuff was happening. For me, my character had just gotten to speak a couple episodes prior to that. My other friends that were also the Gem Saloon gals, there were stories happening around us. Jen got this big storyline where they kill her off. They put her in the box, pretend she's Trixie. So there was a lot happening with all of us, even down to, all of us that were the background players in the saloon. And the Pinkertons had come to town. So our last 2 weeks of shooting was all about the Pinkertons.
Yeah.
So we just had all these 50, 75, 100 background guys in there that normally weren't part of the set. So it was lots of big stuff going on. And the death and all like that. So it was just like a really great time. We had all bonded. This was the end of season 3. It just felt like there was just so much stuff going on. And we parted ways. We went to the wrap party. There was a wrap party a couple days later, a week later. I have lots of great pictures from the wrap party. Everybody was there. I have to mention AC Lyles in all of this. AC Lyles, rest in peace as well, was a publicist at Paramount. Him and David Milch were very good friends, very close friends, and Paramount was one of the producers. And this kind of ties into what went down. HBO did not own the foreign rights, the foreign distribution rights. So it had something to do with that. And it was going to revert. There was like a 5-year period or something. And those rights were going to revert to HBO, but they hadn't yet. So it was the biggest money maker, but it was also the most costly production is what, I ended up learning about it and all. But so we found out, I found out probably just like the rest of y'all. I don't remember if I had gotten a call or like the rumor mill had happened, or I'm not exactly sure if I read a headline, but all of us were taken aback. It was a shock for everyone because we thought hey, everybody, this was great. We had another great season. We were all excited about where our characters were going or where the storyline was going. The ensemble was an ensemble cast of just great, great people. And we were a family. And I remember, I don't know, maybe 6 months later, 9 months later, I just kind of, it's I'm just going to say it, but I kind of found myself in a bit of a funk, like a little bit of a depression. And I didn't quite know why. And I remember talking to my mom. I talked to my mom a lot, I guess, apparently. Mom, you're wise. Apparently, you've got lots of wisdom.
Sounds like it.
Right. And I remember my mom saying, well, Lee, this is about the time of year that you would have been heading back to Melody Ranch. This is about the time of year that you'd be going back to work. She's like, and for 3 years, this has been your life. That like every July, August, you reported to set, you got your uniform, you got your costume, you went through wardrobe, and it was exciting to work for the next like 4 or 5 months on the same project and know that that was coming up again. And she's like, so, that's probably something what you're feeling right now is it's like almost that back to school feeling, right? Of like, okay, it's time to go back to school. And then school's not there anymore or, whatever it was. So it was crazy, and I've kept in touch with David and many of the people, all these years. Afterwards, David went on to do John from Cincinnati and a few other shows, Luck, and a few other shows that just didn't really get their legs about them. But I got to see David in LA, not last fall, but the fall before. He put out a memoir. David Milch has his own memoir, and they did a book signing and a book reading. And I was invited, so I went out to Santa Monica. Robin Weigert, who played Calamity Jane, she was there. She stood on the microphone and read some works. A bunch of people came out, and were there to support David. And so I got to see him, from what I understand. He's not doing the best. He's not in the best health these days and whatnot. I was really appreciative that I got to be there at the book signing and the book launch and got to see everybody again, not too long ago. Yeah, but
it's amazing that you're in school for a little bit, right? You're at the gym and then you land this role and then they're starting to send you to school, right? If the training on set wasn't invaluable enough, now they're sending you to school, but you had a proper season 3 ending. No one knew that was the real ending. And all these years later, you guys, most of you still stay in touch. That's phenomenal.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, were you in the movie?
I was not in the movie.
Okay.
Sadly, I pitched myself. I tried. I found out later David wasn't as hands-on with that. Maybe, who knows? I tried, but I did get to go, not the premiere, but the very next day, they did a big screening at the Television Academy. And I got to go to that and got to see Greg Feinberg, one of the producers there, and a few of the other people. I loved it. Everything I saw, I cheered. I liked the way they wrapped it up, the stories that they told. I thought it went really well. Did you guys see it? Did you guys see the 2-hour wrap up? Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was great. Well, listen, it was their loss. They should have had you.
I know, I wasn't. No, I guess I was too old to still be in the Gem Saloon. I don't know. I'll just go with that.
Well, when listen, when they filmed it, you have that. There's a whole genre for that now. So and men probably like it. I don't know. They might have.
Absolutely, right? Well, right. Westerns, absolutely. Westerns are just great to work on. Just the period pieces. It was just so neat. The hair and makeup. I was in hair and makeup for, 60 to 90 minutes, like every morning, just as the background gals, because it was, I believe they won Emmys. They were at least nominated if they didn't win for the hair and makeup.
Yep.
John and Adam were the heads of the department. Adam Brandy, I'm blanking on John's last name. This is 25 years ago, but they were amazing. And, and that was the other thing. For those of us who had long hair, they loved us, right? Then they just got to play with our hair. And there were days where I would just leave set with my hair all still up from whatever they did to me. There's a photo shoot I went and did, like with my hair all still done. It was great. The
you
costumes,
definitely went out that night.
I definitely did.
Makeup, costume.
Janie Bryant did all the costumes, and she's gone on to win all kinds of things. She's out there just killing it. I think she's got her own clothing line out there. Just like Like, I mean, you hear it in my voice, every single person. Like, you know, I can name people from the catering department to the costume to the wardrobe, like all had an impact on my life and my time on the show. And I imagine they had an impact on pretty much everyone's life who was on the show. It was just, you know, from the bottom to the top and back down to the bottom.
You were on Deadwood, you know, which is a huge production. Transitioned over to Robot Chicken, then spent some time. I don't know if my name was Earl, was one episode or a recurring role. One episode.
It was just one episode. It was like a week-long shoot, but it was just one episode. It was a season finale with Christian Slater. So it was actually pretty darn cool in a similar way. No. He was the guest director. He was guest directing. And so basically that it was a similar kind of thing where I started off as background on the show. They hired, I don't know, a bunch of people to look like hippies. And they came in to like the lunchroom or whatever, and they asked who was union and could anybody sing? Well, of course, we all raised our hands. And trust me, I can't sing, but I did sing in Our Lady of Loretta choir, right? So did you guys sing in the choir?
No, we'd hide it.
No? Okay, so I've sang in the choir. I've sang in choirs and choruses my whole life, but I'm not a singer. So they ask if anybody can sing. We all raise our hands because something big is about to happen, right? They want to know who's union and who can sing. They take us out 5 at a time and make us sing Michael, Row Your Boat Ashore. So I'm like, I got this. It's a church song. I got this, right?
Yeah.
In front of Christian Slater.
Wow.
And the other director, the producer. And somehow I was one of the one chosen.
That is phenomenal.
That's fantastic.
That's great.
Get booked as this hippie singer and come back on a set the next day. And, you know, now we're excited. You know, we're part of the hippie singers. There's like 4 or 5 of us. So they set the scene up. And the scene is Jason Lee, right? That's his.
Yeah, Jason Lee.
That's Earl.
So he's laying down like, and Christian Slater is doing this like saging over him with like a stick of sage, some sort of cleansing. And they're doing the rehearsal. And I happen to be positioned so that I'm standing next to Christian Slater as one of these hippie singers. And they do the rehearsal, and Christian's got this lit thing of sage that he waves, and then he has some other action he has to do. And he says to the director, well, where should I put this? Like after he's done with it, it's a lit piece of sage, you know, they light it on fire and it smokes and all that. And the director kind of looks at him, you know, there's no table or anything around. And I go, you can hand it to me. And Christian looks at me and he looks back at the other director and he goes, I can hand it to her. And the guy's like, okay.
In my head, my name is Tess. That's the same thing. Yeah.
Right? It's moments like that, right? Where like lightning struck. And, you know, some people would say like you're aligned, right? Right place, right time, you know, divine timing, you know, and there's a train of thought out there, you know, that like attracts like. And the more that you can stay downstream in your thinking, you know, the more of those kinds of opportunities can open up, right? Or when you're in the zone, you're in the zone, right? Like you just kind of know it. There's also like a known fact kind of in the industry that if you like book a vacation and you decide you're going to actually leave LA or New York for a minute, all of a sudden, you know, you're going to have an audition or you're going to book a job, right? And the same thing though with momentum, right? Like a lot of times I have found this to be true with commercials. I've booked a couple commercials over the years. There was a Walmart commercial a couple years back for like Black Friday and things like that, that when you book like a commercial, then it's almost as if like your next audition, the next couple auditions you go on, you're just, I don't know, you're just more grounded. You're right. You're on fire. And like, it's all like all of a sudden you book like 2 or 3 jobs in a row, even though you hadn't booked one in 2 or 3 years. It seems to happen, but you know, that's true of that's true of anything really, right? Like when you have momentum, you have momentum.
I mean, I think all that stuff is true, right? The lightning, the momentum, but you have to give yourself a little credit. You purposefully did not keep your mouth shut, right? Like in my head, I'm Tess, and that made all the difference, even though the line never came out, right? I'm sure that impressed him in the moment. You know what I mean? Or hand the sage to me. Like you could have just not said anything like the other hippie singers. You know what I mean? You have to give yourself a little credit for sticking up and fighting for it too.
I'm from Southwest Philly, yo.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
And we talk about this all the time, Leah. Like it's the old adage. Whenever we're trying to book guests or is this content good? You know, listen, the worst they're going to say is no.
Yeah.
That's the worst that's going to happen. Somebody's either going to say no. They're not going to like your content. At the end of the day, are you still here? right? Do you still have the ability to do more and go further? And it's the people, like Joe said, give yourself some credit. It's the people who don't give up. And that's one thing. I'm really impressed with your story so far. I'm really impressed with your perseverance. I can tell that probably from a young age, you were always definitely an outgoing individual, never give up kind of person. And saying that,
I'm the oldest of 5. I had to be, right? I had to be,
especially in
outgoing
Southwest
and outrageous, right?
The one thing I do want to make sure we touch on is, so after spending some time, with going to Robot Chicken, My Name is Earl, having a lot of success in the independent film world from what we've seen. Now you're involved in this new endeavor, right? We all have a mutual friend, Chris Domenico.
Crispy, as a lot of people like to call him.
Crispy, I love that on social media.
This Delco the movie, this has really become, it's hot in the industry from what I understand, especially in the independent film world. And tell us how you got involved with that, because I'm fascinated. I haven't seen the whole film yet because Chris is a genius. You have to go to a film festival or you have to go to a screening, which, let's face it, you want your craft to be out there. You want your art to be out there. But you still want to generate a little revenue, right? So that was
at least enough to make the next one, which is
exactly
what he told us. Yeah.
As I said, this really looks like a homage to Kevin Smith films, which I think are some of the greatest independent films ever made. And tell us about how you got involved with Chris, where you see Delco the movie going. Joe and I truly both hope it's one of the most successful things in the independent film world. And let us know, what your thoughts are about all that, how you got involved, where you see it going.
Yeah. So Chris and I met about 13 years ago. I happened to be back in town and I saw a Craigslist posting. Remember Craigslist? Yeah. I saw Craigslist. I mean, it's still out there. I just don't think the same kind of postings are there anymore. But I saw a Craigslist posting that there were these Sun Valley High School alumni shooting or holding auditions for a project that was going to be shooting at the new Sun Center Studios that had just opened up in Delaware County. It's about 13 years ago. And I was like, Sun Valley High School, that's where I graduated from. I didn't know anybody over here in Delco was doing any kind of movie making or anything, right? I left town to kind of do that, and I wasn't doing that prior to moving out to LA. Yeah. So I didn't really know that world here. I wasn't connected to any independent filmmakers here. I wasn't connected to anyone in that world here. So I ended up reaching out to those guys, and Chris and I worked on that project together. That project was someone else helmed it and never really came out. But Chris and I, it was a web series. Chris and I stayed in touch this whole time. So as you likely know, Chris is a full-time high school teacher. That's what he does, right? Quote unquote, normal life, and I'm the one out in Los Angeles doing the other things. But he's always been a filmmaker, writing, making movies, etc. So Delco was a project, and I'm sure he talked about this on the interview with you guys, was a project that he had written back in 2003, 2004 when he was a high school senior at Sun Valley High School. So we both graduated from the same high school, just like a decade apart. So we didn't know each other in high school. He actually went to school with one of my sisters. You guys went to school with one of my brothers. He went to school with one of my sisters. So about 3 years ago, it was coming up on like the 25th anniversary or something of when he originally wrote Delco the Movie, and he decided he wanted to do it for real. So he knew that I had a lot of his success with independent films and crowdfunding. Like we talked about Girl Lost. Also, Remember the Sultana is a documentary that I produced with Sean Astin as the narrator and executive producer. It was also a crowdfunding success. Yeah, also a crowdfunding success. So I had a lot of high profile, let's call them, crowdfunding successes over the past decade. Great success rate, and we raised millions of dollars. But as any independent filmmaker knows, crowdfunding it's a hard step, but that's just one step, right? Once you've got the funding, you still have to make the movie, you still have to get the movie out there. So there's a lot of crowdfunding campaigns. Crowdfunding itself is hard. Like 50% of all crowdfunding campaigns fail. But I would be interested to know what the statistics are of how many of those crowdfunded movies actually get made and then how many of them actually get released.
Yeah.
I'd be interested to see those stats. I'm sure ChatGPT or somebody like that could pull them up for us somehow. So Chris reached out to me about 3 years ago now and just said he wanted to bring me on, hire me full time to be the crowdfunding manager, and told me the backstory. And, I was on board. I happened to be in town. This was a year or so after the pandemic. And so I've been spending more time on the East Coast, just wanted to kind of be back with the family. I think a big perspective shift happened for a lot of people after we went through all that and just being apart from everybody. So I happen to be here on the East Coast. And that I think was one of the things that's kept me here, because it just kind of then had legs of its own. So, at first I came on to manage the crowdfunding campaign. And part of my job as the crowdfunding manager is kind of to talk sense into the filmmaker and, bring that goal to a realistic level.
From a budgetary standpoint, right?
From a budgetary standpoint. And from your reach, your network, like you could come to me and say, Leah, I have this project and I want to raise $40,000. And I could say, okay, we can do that. Then you could come and I could go, no, let's drop that down to 20, right? It's just going to depend on the person, on their network, on their social media, and like what I know about them and the project, because every team is going to have a different reach, right? Different capacity. In the beginning, when Chris first came to me, it was kind of like, okay, this is a friend of mine, another independent film, another project. It's a crowdfunding, I'm being hired to be the crowdfunding manager. And I kind of thought that was going to be the end of it. Like a lot of the projects that I come on board to crowdfund, that's what I'm there for. And once that 30 days is up or that 6 weeks is up, then, I may or may not do anything more with that project, right? So there's only few and far between projects that I then go on to become a producer on or act and produce on, those sorts of things, A lot of times after 30, 45 days working with a team, nobody wants to see each other ever again, especially
if you double their budget, they're ecstatic. You have a great day. Yeah, I get it.
I don't know how intense it gets, right? Like some people, like I end up sometimes having to turn into like the, the nagging mother, the cheerleader, the coach, the one that's just like really pushing them to get up there and do it. Some people don't like me when it's all said and done, but
you're varsity, right? You're varsity, they're JV. You know what I mean?
Right.
Let's be honest. That's just how, right now, that's the dynamic.
Yes, right, exactly. Like, and so, it's a lot of tough love. A lot of tough love can sometimes go into it. And sometimes we walk away going like, great to meet you. Never want to see you again. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
But with Chris, it was different. It just, not only are we already friends, but Delco, the movie itself, had a special place for me because here I am back in Delco, full time for the first time in 25 years. And to see the community get involved and how much support and how many, like I have never seen anything like this. I've lived in LA for 25 years. There's an independent film shooting on every other corner.
Sure.
And nobody cares. And I hate to say that. I don't want to say nobody cares because, of course, the filmmakers care and the actors care and everybody involved cares. But it's an
there's a
industry
different
town,
vibe and feeling. Yeah.
Nobody's blinking an eye. And I tell you one thing, nobody is letting you shoot in their Tom Jones 24-hour family diner or the Brookhaven police station. Spray paint the Delco shack. We were blessed. We would have never been able to film the movie the way the movie was filmed if it weren't for the donation of all the locations. Every single location was donated. That would never happen in Los Angeles. And not only were they donated, but people were happy to donate and happy to be in the film. Like the new owner of Tom Jones Restaurant in Brookhaven, we ended up putting her and her husband and her kids, in the scene,
Yeah.
And we ended up putting her at the register, the cash register. Just so happened to be on the day that Madeline Wright from CBS came down to set to do some footage for the news. And the owner of Tom Jones ends up on the news that night as like the actress, behind the cash register. I was like, it's perfect. It's so perfect. Tom Jones is getting all this love. And then the owner ended up being in the news shot. And it's just, so things like that just happen over and over and over with Delco the Movie. And the press has been phenomenal. The community has been phenomenal. And when the crowdfunding was over, I started to tell you guys, this wasn't what I expected. I expected just do a crowdfunding campaign with Chris. Hopefully we were still going to be friends when it was all said and done. And hopefully, we pulled together enough money so that he could do an indie film.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, the legs though that it had. So it just skyballed. And so Chris and I have taken it from there, brought it out to the community, got even more donations, more sponsorships. And then we shot it.
We've been here with Leah Savoli, Southwest Philadelphia, Delco native. who spent a great time with us. We cannot thank you enough, Leah. You have been phenomenal. We wish you nothing but the best. We wish Delco the Movie nothing but the best. And as far as we're concerned, you're a new friend of the show.
Well,
Great stories. Great.
I thank you guys for having us. Yeah. DelcoTheMovie.com. We just, we just screened at Kevin Smith's Smodcastle Film Festival a couple weeks ago in North Jersey. It was our first time airing outside of Delaware County, outside of Delco. So we were a little nervous. Chris and I were there. Paul Martirano came with us. A few of our other team members came, and they liked it. They laughed. They didn't laugh at all the Delco jokes, but they laughed at other jokes that Delconians didn't laugh at. So that was our biggest concern. Will it play outside of the Delco area? And it did. So we're really excited about what's next. We've got a couple distributors we've been talking to. We've got a meeting coming up this week. And I'm going to say that you'll have an update from us within the month as to where you're going to be able to see Delco the Movie online. Now, you probably won't be able to see it till early next year because the process takes a little while, but we will have an answer for you guys, I really think, within the month as to what's going on and where we find our home for Delco the Movie. And Chris already wrote the next movie. We did a table read last week for Gamers, which is the next Delco movie. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Great. Well, listen, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you.
Thanks, guys. Thanks so much. Southwest Philly in the house.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Bye-bye.
ma'am. We'll talk soon. Thanks, Leah.